So in this video, we're going to talk about functions. Functions are one of the main things we do in Python, and certainly something that's going to be our next exam. Okay, so the idea of a function is that you're going to take a bit of code and you're going to place it in its own little area so it can be ran more than once. Okay, so we've used functions before. So if you have a list, let's call it x is equal to 1, 2, 3, then we can say print the length of x, and length is a function. Okay, so if we run this, it's going to do as we expect. All about functions, we'll call this. Okay, and that's going to print the 3. Okay, so that's an example of a function that we don't have to write. Someone's written that for us. Okay, but we can also define our own functions using the def keyword. So we're going to define some function, and then once we define it, we can call it. Okay, so we can define function f if we want. Okay, and it's going to have parentheses. It may take parameters, it may not. Okay, so let's just say it's going to print hello. Pretty basic version here. Okay, and then down here we're going to say f, call it twice. Okay, so now when I run this, it's going to say hello twice. Okay, so I can take that code and amplify it. Okay, so let me turn the line numbers here. Okay, so again, the way this is going to go as far as when it goes to interpret, it's going to start at line 1 and see that it's a comment and ignore it. It's going to ignore line 2 because that's a blank line. At line 3, it's going to say, oh, okay, this is a function definition for f. I know what that means now, but I'm not going to do anything about it. So it's going to skip 4. 5 is blank. When it goes to 6, it's going to say f. Oh, I know where f is. It's going to go to line 3 and line 4. There's no return here since it doesn't return anything. So then it's done. It goes back to line 7 and does the same thing again, back to 3 and then back to 4 and then finally back to 8 and 9. Okay, so if we were going to write the way this works, it goes, the first line to be executed is going to be line 6. Okay, and from 6, it goes to 3 to 4 to 7 to 3 to 4, and then it's done. Okay, so that's the way that works basically. Okay, so this is an example of a function that doesn't really do anything. And I've said in class, and it's worth remembering, that if a function prints in general, all it should do is print. It could be a print a menu, whatever you want to do. Okay, but functions can do other things. Okay, so this function takes no parameters and it doesn't return anything. So let's talk about functions that do take parameters. Okay, so if we have another function here, and let's go ahead, actually, before that, let's talk about the idea of a main. All of our programs now should have a main function that then somewhere at the bottom we call main. Okay, this is just to help us organize things so people can see what's going on. It also avoids, since you don't do anything to the last line, it makes sure that you've read all your functions. If not, you'd have to make sure your functions were defined before you tried to use them. Okay, so let's say we're going to define another function down here, something simple, add them up. Okay, it's a dumb program, you don't really need it, but if this is going to just show something here. Okay, so we've got x and y and z. Okay, so that's the parameters that come in. Okay, and then again, we have to talk about parameters because if we send in a variable, whether it's a string or with the new one that we talked about with strings, it could be a string, could be an int, could be a float, could be a Boolean, whatever. Whatever changes we make in the function are not going to be reflected back out in the main program. Okay, but if we send a list or a tuple, then we have to worry about the side effects. Okay, so even though we can't change the individual elements of a tuple, we can rewrite the whole tuple and that will have side effects. Okay, so we have to be more careful with that. Okay, so this one, it's just like, so up here, let's do an example. If we say add them up, and they could be variables, they could just be numbers. Okay, what we're doing here, and we have to have 3 both places. We're saying in essence, x is equal to 1, and we're saying that y is equal to 2, and we're saying that z is equal to 3 inside this function. Okay, so it calls them, it does that. So in this case, we can just print x plus y plus z. Okay, and then that's it. Okay, so if we run this one, we see that it prints out 6, which is 3 plus 2 plus 1. Okay, so again, it's not very useful just to print out. So it would be better for us to return that. So if we return something from the function, the x plus y plus z, and again, you can make another variable, sum is equal x plus y plus z, whatever you want. But then I have to add something to catch this, like n equals, okay, or even a print, add them up 1, 2, 3. Okay, so because if I just do this, it's not an error. It just doesn't do anything. Okay, so at a minimum, we want to print, but normally we want to capture that input. Okay, and then we can print out the n. Okay, and this should have the same result. Prints out the 6. Okay, so that's the basics of functions. Really, there's more we can do with them, but that's the basic idea. Okay, so again, if we're looking at this one as far as what happens first, it's going to look at line 1, say it's comment we don't care about. 2 is blank. 3, it's going to say, okay, now I know where main's at. It's going to skip 4, 5, and 6 and go to 7. Say, okay, now I know where add 'em up is at. It's going to skip 8 and 9 and 10 because they're comments. It's going to skip 11. It's going to skip all the way down to 17. So 17 is the first line to execute. It then goes to 3, then to 4. At 4, when it sees the add 'em up, it's going to stop and go to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Then back to 4 and assign whatever the value of that is back to the end. Then do 5. Then it's done. Okay, that's all it's going to do. Okay, so again, functions get more complicated when you're dealing with lists and tuples. So we have to worry about things a little bit more. And the functions that are this simple, we don't have to worry so much about. But in general, for our functions and for testing purposes, certainly, I want to make sure that you're thinking about for each function, we'll do a different function. Let's get rid of all this. Okay, so let's say we do have a list. We have list A is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Then we have a function, let's say that we want to do what with that list? Double list. And we're going to send it A. Okay. So we have to think about the preconditions for this function. Okay. And we want A to be a list. Okay. If A is not a list, we're going to have trouble. Okay. And we can check this. We could say if A is it, how does is instance work? Is instance of a list? Is that how that works? I don't remember. Let's see what this does for us. Do something. It will probably tell me what's wrong. Things we should have looked up before we started. Well, it didn't give me an error. Oh, I didn't call the function. That's why. See, it doesn't check anything till we call it. So let's say double list A. And I'm guessing we're going to get errors. Yeah, it doesn't like that. So maybe it's actually, let me pause the video and then let me check what that does. It happens. I was really close. It's is instance, not is instance of, but it is a in list. Okay. So as a precondition, and I don't think we've seen this in class or not, but we should do this. If not, is this an instance of, then we want to return, I don't know, something, -1 and deal with the error. Okay, so I'm not overly concerned about that, but we do have to worry about that precondition. Okay, and then we have our post conditions. Okay, and then A is unchanged, potentially. Or maybe it's A is changed. You have to make that option. But if you want to say A is unchanged, then we want to let some other variable equal to the list expression of A. Okay, so now we can do, if we just want to go through and print them out, we could say for N and B. Okay, then we can print 2 times N. Okay, And that should work for us. Yeah, we get the 2468. Okay. And again, we're not overly concerned in this case because we're not going to make any changes, but it never hurts to go ahead and add those preconditions in. Okay. And tuples are weird. And let me tell you why tuples are weird. Because you would think, I just leave it as A, you would think that since they're immutable, that you couldn't make changes, and it will stop some things. Okay, so it will stop. So let's say I did and wanted to say that B, I need the index for that. So I'll do an index one. It's the other way to go through a list. I'm kind of combining functions and lists here together, but I could say index is equal to 0, and then while index is less than the length of B, okay, then I could say here that B sub index is equal to B sub index times 2, okay, and then index is equal to index plus 1, okay. I can do that, and that's going to, if that's a tuple, it's going to give us an error, okay. Well, first off, it's not going to get past this, so we'll skip this one for now, okay. But this is just to show you when you send a tuple to a function, this is going to blow up, and a tuple doesn't support that, okay. So, and we want to make sure we're not doing this, so we want there to be an exception for that, so it doesn't happen. Or we could do the is condition or is instance for that as well. But what you can do here, okay, is that I can say A is equal to 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. And now if I do that and print A, it's created a new one in the same memory address. Okay, so if I do this, and it worked this time. That is so weird. And I'll tell you why it's weird. Because I tested this, I suspected it would work this way, but I wrote an example that didn't work that way. It's very strange. I'm not sure what the difference is. I don't know why. That is not causing an issue. Anyway, so I guess we have to test that out a little further to see. But that's the idea. You have to be more careful when we're sending things that are the list or the tuples, or later when we get to dictionaries and things like that, to a function, to make sure that you're not causing issues. Okay. We also have to worry about the preconditions and the post conditions to make sure those are okay. Okay. And remember also for the post conditions, sometimes you can do the assert function. The assert function will let you assert that some condition's true. Like if we double the list, the length should be the same. And if it's not true, it causes an assert error, which you can then catch through a try catch block and do some stuff with. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to have to figure out why my tuple behaved differently than it did just before I started this video, because I was checking that out. But anyway, so that's the idea about functions. Okay, all of our programs should have main functions. All the functions that we do, especially for the test, should have the preconditions and the post conditions very explicitly laid out. Okay, and then you want to test those and by making sure that you're setting all possible ranges of things, and you want to make sure that you have the try and except blocks when you need them. Okay. Okay, so that's what I've got for files. If you have any, or functions, if you have any questions about that, make sure you let me know. We're about a week out from the exam.